it is commonplace to receive drawings from others. They're often from architects or surveyors, and here's an example of a drawing that has come to us as a DWG file, and we have opened it up in the gCADPlus environment, and it's going to take some time to explain what's happening in this particular drawing. The first thing you'll see if we hold our wheel of the mouse down and pan down a little, first thing to note is that rather large dotted line around. That's because the polyline that prescribes that area has been drawn with a line weight, very thick line weight. In fact, if we select the polyline, you can see the line weight's been set at 2 millimeters. It's on a layer called L-L0-viewport. The layer name is odd because you wouldn't normally put a boundary like that on a viewport layer, but it is good that the designer here has prefixed a layer name with an L dash. That means all landscape layers should start with an L dash, but I digress. To remove that, let's unselect all by right clicking. To remove that very heavy line, let's pick line weight, and the line weight switch is now off. So this has come from the AutoCAD environment, and someone's left, I think, the line weight turned on. The next thing to notice is, notice the external border here. It's a rectangle, but inside the border there is some title block information, north, drawing number, and so on. I suspect some of that has been removed, but what we have here is we're in model space, and you will remember, especially if you read chapter 8 of the user guide, you'll see that we normally, and most landscape architects and designers work this way, we normally work from a layout. Now there is a layout with this drawing. Someone has called it print, and I'll zoom extents. And if we look at this layout, can you see we can't actually select anything at all. There's a viewport, which is a view back into the model. So if we go back to the model, we should eliminate all of that information. That's not part of the Australian Design Standard. You would erase those, and we'll get in here and erase more of it. So we've cleaned up the drawing in a sense. We'll zoom extents. So the drawing's been cleaned up a little. What I'm going to do is to go into the layout space, and I'm actually going to remove I could remove the floating viewport, or I could simply double click, and what that does is jumps me back into model space, and that it enables me to set a border, a porthole border, and now I can display it back on the layout, right click and deactivate the viewport. So now we're looking at a viewport. But if we just select the viewport, you can see that the color has been set to white, which is fine. White on a white background won't show. But what I'll do for the moment is change that back to color red, so that we can easily select that floating viewport. It could be positioned on the page, and we can move things around. But you'll notice if you look over here at the scale, it's a fixed scale at a scale of 100. So that's on an A1 sheet, I think. Let's right click and just check in the Layouts Manager. Yeah, that's on an A1 sheet in portrait view, and it's got a fixed 1 to 100 scale. So that's fine. So we're cleaning up the drawing. However, there's one major problem with this drawing. I've saved it in my temp folder I've saved it in a folder on C called Burnley, and if I look at it, I've called the drawing Step 1, and you'll see it's 4,181 kilobytes, but it's a 4 megabyte drawing. Now, that's a huge drawing, and any drawing with the amount of information that you see here should be much, much smaller than that. And so it's worth spending a little time trying to work out why. If we go up to the blocks item there on the standard toolbar, you can see that in fact in here there are an awful lot of blocks, and the blocks are named block 10, which is a got a 13, and there's a block 100, which is probably a little point marker. Here's another one, and so on. I'm trying to work out what is happening, but you'll notice that some of these, at least, when we click on them, as an example, block 1000, we can delete it. And are you sure you want to delete it? Yeah, let's delete all the unused blocks, and 2,692 blocks have been deleted. And but unfortunately, still an awful lot of other blocks are left in this drawing. They don't appear to have much in them, but they're cluttering up the drawing enormously. So this drawing is huge. What's the best way to clean it up and to reduce its file size? The simplest way is just to select everything that we see, although perhaps we might go to our layers tool first and just see what's happening in the layers. Wow, so this has brought an enormous number of layers across with it. One of them is turned off for the moment. We'll turn that one back on. There's a trick here, all use layers. Let's turn them all on and return to the drawing. Nothing appears to have bobbed up as a result of that. But let's go back to our layers, and we're looking at all use layers now. We go back to all, and you see the enormous number of layers. This has obviously come from a surveyor, and lots of layers there. Most of this greyed out area means there's nothing on them. There's a little bit on a layer viewport, construction, shadow, and so on, but not much else. So most of those layers can be removed. We haven't yet done it, but under Tools and Purge, we've got a Purge command which will remove all unused entities. When I say we haven't yet done it, we haven't yet included unused layers in that Purge command, but we will in a future release. Let's try and clean the drawing up. Let's see if we can get it smaller. The best way to do it, as I started to say, is to select everything, right-click, copy to the clipboard, and start a brand new drawing. We'll start one without a template, and we'll right-click and paste from the clipboard. It's asking us to specify an insertion point. Just type 0, 0, and then we'll right-click and zoom extents. Now we have a drawing with some unusual point markers showing. These are points, I suspect. Let's click on, let's regen first so that everything gets regenerated. Pick on that and check it. Yes, it is a point. It's been set with a very big line weight, and I'll just try that again because I'm wondering whether that point has got a Z coordinate. No, it doesn't. We could in fact type in 9.535, which is the surveyor's point data with that's obviously a Z coordinate. But I digress a little. You'd probably want to get rid of those point markers or reduce them. That's done with Format, Point Styles, and just bring this back to say 0.5 and OK it, and you see all the points go back to a much smaller stage or size. We haven't yet set up a sheet, so let's do that. So Format, Layout. The previous drawing that we copied this from was on an A1 sheet with ISO A1, presumably there's A1 there, and in book format we'll go OK. Good idea to label this. We'll say this is a layout called Plan 1 to 100 and OK it. We should see, oh, I forgot to hit the Enter key. Let's right click and go to the Layouts Manager and just get in there and change that to Plan 1-100. Hit the Enter key, that burns it in. OK, now the Layout tab is properly labelled. Right click and zoom extents. You may notice that a very fine grid is showing. That's shown in the status line as red, meaning it's active. You can click on that and that removes it. So we now have a 1 to 100 sheet there. What we want to do for that floating viewport is fix its scale to 100 and hit the enter key and make it a fixed scale, yes, and we're done. So now we have a fixed scale of 1 to 100 in there. I'll save this. I'll go back to model space, zoom extents, and I'll save this drawing again, save as, and we'll call it step 2 and save. We're now in the Explorer tool, and you can see that the file size has been reduced from over 4 megabytes to 53 kilobytes. That's a phenomenal decrease in size. So we now have a drawing that will behave really, really well, very snappily, and is pretty cleaned up. So let's close that, and I'll just check and show you that under layers, we've still picked up that L-viewport layer. There must be something on that layer, we'll check that in a minute, but the majority of layers, all those unused layers, have disappeared. I'm a little offended by that one, and I need to find out what's on it and remove it. But we have a drawing which is currently called step 2, which is quick, easy to load and easy to work on. gCADPlus gives us quite a useful tool to determine layers and isolate layers, and I'm still bothered by that layer name that's come across. So I'll go to Tools and Isolate Layer, and I'll pick the layer. So I'm going to isolate everything on layer L0-viewport. And that's interesting. That suggests that a number of the lines are in fact on that layer, and you can see in the properties box this polyline is. So this drawing is a mixture of some entities on one layer and some on another, which is not good practice. Let's isolate. You'll use the same tool again. We'll isolate layer 0 now. So we have all of our points for surfacing and 3D data on layer 0 and some polylines. So this drawing is a real mixture. Let's go back to turning all layers on and see everything again. The way to fix that is to select everything. All layers are on, select everything, right click, the whole lot are selected, come over here to layer, which of course varies, and we'll put everything back on layer 0 and zoom extents. Now when we go to the layer tool, our all used layers are shown. If we pick all layers, can you see now that the little indicator alongside the layer L viewport is grayed out? We can select it and delete it, and the next time we load this drawing, that layer will be gone, so everything we see is on layer 0. You probably want to change that later on. You might want to move everything onto a layer called base data or site plan or words to that effect. But we now have a well organized drawing, and we can understand it and work with it.